We're back. I'm back.
Chinwag.
I'm still alive. I'm still alive. Chinwag is still alive. It's the thing that will not die. It's
alive.
It is alive. Chinwag is alive and kicking.
And we go hard in the paint here. That's how Chinwag does things. We go hard in the paint.
What does that mean?
Oh, you haven't heard that phrase?
No.
Oh, it's sort of a basketball sort of reference. It means like it's a fighter show. It's a hardcore show. We go hard in the paint.
Because the paint on the floor? Because
you go deep into there's deep penetration, as it were. Has no double entendre there whatsoever.
I understand. No, never. This is a clean family show.
That's right.
This is a clean family show. See, it's a basket. The second you said basketball reference, I was like, I'm sorry, wake me when it's over.
Half our audience too just went to sleep immediately.
Yeah. No, listen, basketball's an amazing thing. I know nothing about it is my problem. I'm not a
What's your sport? A baseball?
It may come as a real shock to you, Steve, but I'm not a big sportsman. I know it may come as a huge shock to all the listeners. If I do, I enjoy.
You are well-rounded, though. I think you probably like sports, but you just don't follow teams.
No, I don't really. Again, it's like I don't quite have that obsessive thing of following it all. That I just don't have that kind of personality, oddly enough, except for certain things. But I do enjoy a baseball game. I like watching a ball game, listening to a ball game on the radio sometimes, going to a live game. I'll tell you, the sport that I enjoy is ice hockey, is going to see ice hockey live. Yeah, I like ice hockey.
So violent.
Very. That's what I like, Steve.
Yep.
The
bloodlust.
The bloodlust is high when I go watch an ice skating match.
It's a great game.
It is a great game. Did you grow up playing it at all out there?
No. I have friends, though, that did. And of course, if you're Canadian, everybody plays. Yeah. But where I grew up was not like we were sort of like top of Illinois, bottom of Wisconsin. But if you were up further north in Wisconsin or Upper Peninsula, everybody plays hockey. Yeah.
You know what I think you and I should take up together? We should take up curling. I think you and I should take I should take up curling.
I'm at the age where that's the maximum effort I can expect.
There must be something to it that's difficult. It can't just be like, well, I guess so, but I mean, which I don't understand. It's something about like heating the ice up or cooling the ice down or something like that. It makes the thing move faster or something like that. I don't know.
It looks absurd. I mean, I know it's talented and I know it's great.
It must take
a real sport,
unbelievable level of skill, but it looks ridiculous. It looks ridiculous. I don't know. I'd like to try it sometime.
Sorry to all the curlers out there. But.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't want to offend any curlers. And if there are any curlers out there who want to write in and explain to me what exactly is going on with the brooms and everything, that would be great. I would love that, actually. That would be great. And while you're at it, like informing me about curling and about what they do with the brooms, go to, Apple Podcasts, go to one of these
rank and review us. Give us the 5 stars if you would. What kind of show can you hear such great sports commentary as the Chinwag?
Because when you want your sports news hard hitting and hot,
it's the Chinwag.
Oh my God! Yeah, give us some ratings. Give us some love. Bang the thing over. Send it off. Text an episode of the show to a friend right now.
Yeah. That would really help us out.
And let them know that if they want to know more about curling, this is the place for them to come. But before we get to that, this is terribly exciting, Steve. We are coming for you, San Francisco. Oh my God, Steve, San Francisco. This is out of sight. We're going to be at the San Francisco Sketch Fest live January 27th at 1 p.m. at Marines Memorial Theater.
Yeah, tickets are on sale now. Go to sfsketchfest.com. And I believe you left your heart in San Francisco.
I sure did. I got to go back and find it, Steve. It's just lying there, beating and bloody in the middle of the fucking bay. It's sitting there. That's sfsketchfest.com for tickets to see us live. January 27th, 1 p.m., San Francisco. Here's the best part. Here's maybe the most exciting part.
Tell me.
This is the man who stole my heart. He's going to be a guest of ours. That's going to be comedian, author, host of the fantastic podcast, Beautiful Anonymous, Mr. Chris Gethard.
Oh, he's going to be amazing.
There. Oh,
he's great.
Boy, do I love him.
Very talented
He's the
man.
best. Absolutely. So come out and see us.
Yeah.
Come out and see us, and it's going to be wild and nutty.
We're going to talk about all kinds of crazy shit.
It's going to be like the Haight-Ashbury in 1967.
Everybody's going to be on acid. The dead are going to come there. It's going to be like Grateful Dead revival.
Absolutely. It's going to be bananas. Abby Hoffman's going to show up. Everybody's going to be there.
Come on out.
Now, before we get on to our guest here, I want to just throw in, something will come up in the conversation we're going to have that I want to clarify beforehand so that people, because it goes by fast, right, Steve?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that is that there's reference made to something called the Museum of Jurassic Technology, which is located out on Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles, California. It goes, this amazing guest we have discusses it briefly. It is a museum started by a guy named David Wilson. I don't know when he started it, in the 90s probably sometime. It's a kind of extraordinary project this guy has dedicated an enormous amount of time and effort, and I'm sure money to. And what would you say it is, Steve?
It's incredible. It's like it's sort of like a storefront. You could walk right by it and not know what you're seeing. Yeah. But when you go in there, it's a museum that looks like a natural history museum, but it's wacky. It's
wacky. And some of the stuff in there is real and some of the stuff in there is not real. And it's hard to tell the difference because it's all presented straight-faced, straight-laced. Yeah. It's a very peculiar place. It's a kind of performance of a museum going on.
Yes.
It's like,
it's really odd.
It's beautiful. It's an incredible place. There's a gallery of all the dogs sent into space by the Soviets. The paintings of the many dogs. I mean, it's that kind of thing. And it's an amazing place. Anyway,
and they had miniatures. Like, remember there was like a sculptures that a guy would do with a human hair. He would make sculptures out of them.
Grains of rice. On grains of rice and on the eye of a needle. Those are all real, I think.
That's real.
But then some of it's not. As you'll hear this extraordinary guest that we have coming up. And this gentleman is an award-winning New York Times bestselling author and prolific creator of prose, poetry, film, journalism, comics, song lyrics, drama. It's insane. His works include the legendary comic book series The Sandman, and the novels Good Omens, Stardust, Anansi Boys, American Gods, Coraline, and The Graveyard Book. I mean, so many. It's ridiculous how much this guy has written and continues to write. He's also a goodwill ambassador for the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, and professor in the arts at Bard College. And we have him here. We have him trapped here.
Trapped in a closet.
Yes, and we're going to force him to talk about all kinds of weird shit, but he's a bottomless fund of weird shit.
Yeah, and if you're a fantasy fan and a science fiction fan and just really a literary like nerd like we are, you know this guy's work.
This guy's amazing. Huge. His latest book, What You Need to Be Warm, is available now, and it's quite wonderful. Every copy purchased helps refugees stay warm this winter. Please go out, buy a copy. It makes a great gift, too. We're very thrilled to have this gentleman on the Chinwag. We're big fans. Please welcome Mr. Neil Gaiman. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Where are you, sir?
I'm in Woodstock, New York.
Nice. And do you reside in Woodstock currently?
I do. I have since the end of 2013.
It's an interesting part of the world.
It's a very, very odd part of the world. I love that it is this amazing tourist place. The tourists come out here. The tourists love it. And the tourists are here because of something that didn't ever happen here.
It's true. That's right, isn't it? It didn't actually happen there. It happened somewhere else.
What didn't happen there?
Woodstock itself.
Woodstock.
The famous Woodstock, Steve.
Woodstock. 3 days of peace and love. When I was a 14, 15-year-old, I had a poster on my bedroom wall saying 3 days of peace and love, Woodstock. And I thought, it's that poster. I thought it's Snoopy's little yellow companion named after this festival. It's peace and love. And I got here and, of course, you know, you get here and you say, so, Woodstock Festival, and nice people look at you in a pitying way, as they have said to every other human being. And they're like, yeah, that was in Bethel. It's about an hour and 15 minutes drive from here.
Just a clever ruse. Just another ruse.
Well, I can't believe you lived in Menominee, Wisconsin, which I grew up near there. That blows my mind because that seems like the middle of nowhere to me. And I went, and as a kid, I went to the House on the Rock, and you talk about it in American Gods. It's just amazing to me.
I'm not familiar with either Menominee or the House on the Rock. You're going to probably have to fill me in.
So if you read my novel, American Gods, you will find Menominee in there disguised as a town called Lakeside, but not particularly well disguised. I mean, I disguised it by just changing the name from Menominee to Lakeside.
Clever.
And you will find the House on the Rock as the House on the Rock. And what's wonderful about that is nobody believes that it's a real place. They all assume I must have made this thing up.
Well, it's real.
Menominee is a town on a lake. It was originally a logging town. These days it's a small university town. And I wound up there by accident. I wanted a house that was somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour outside of the Twin Cities, because that was where my ex-wife's family lived. And I knew that as a writer, I am pathetically easy to distract. And I also knew that people who are not writers always assume that writers don't do anything. And they also are fooled by the fact that we are so willing to stop doing whatever we're doing. And, you're coming over. Let me make you coffee. Let me help you alphabetize the spice rack. Let's walk around the garden. Let's, And so I just thought, okay, the only way I'm ever going to get anything done is if I'm far enough away from my wife's enormous extended family that they will have to call first. That it will be a little bit of a schlep to come out there.
And there's nothing else to do there but write.
There was nothing else to do in Menominee but
and go to the House on the Rock. And the House on the Rock is one of these kind of weird, I was saying, is it like the Winchester Ghost House or whatever that thing is, where it's all sort of strange?
It's one of those places that has no reason to exist except that it does. In that way, it's just like the Winchester Ghost House. The Winchester Ghost House at least has this sort of strange origin story of, she was told by a medium that the spirits of all the people killed by the Winchester rifle would not rest easily unless there was hammering going on and unless they were building. Which is a wonderful story. I don't know if it's true. I've also been told that she was experimenting with architectural things and building techniques, and that's another reason for things. But with the House on the Rock, you're in Spring Green, Wisconsin, about 3 hours drive away from Menominee, down much closer to Madison. And Spring Green is famous as the home of Frank Lloyd Wright. And the House on the Rock is kind of Frank Lloyd wrong.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a man started building a house literally on an outcrop of rock, and what he started building was essentially a early 60s bachelor pad. Like a makeout pad. It's
like shag carpeting on the walls,
it's shag carpeting,
mirrored ceilings and stuff.
That whole thing. Okay, and that's where it began. And he didn't even own the rock; he was just building his makeout pad.
Sure, absolutely.
And then people showed up and they said, "Can we see what you're doing?" And he said, "Sure, give me a quarter." And so he would charge them a quarter to come around, and pretty soon he had an income. A lot of those quarters were coming in, and he started buying up the land around, and then pretty soon he started putting things that were more interesting and more weird, and he'd now it wasn't just the house on the rock. The house was just a little part of the thing. There were giant warehouses. He built the streets of yesteryear.
Oh, yeah.
In one. He built a giant sea monster. He had a whole workshop in which people were making fake things that were incredibly cool, like ancient music machines or
so all ersatz contraptions. None of it was sort of, you had people in a fake workshop making fake gizmos.
But he was also buying up real gizmos. He was also doing real stuff. They have the largest carousel in the world is in the house on the rock.
Did he build he built this himself or no? Yes?
He built it himself. All of the animals, there are no horses on the largest carousel in the world. There are wolves.
Camels?
There are absolutely anything. There's a griffin. There's there's lions. Great. Anything you could imagine. There's a sea serpent. There are knights in armor. There's everything, but no horses.
The whole thing feels like a life-size curiosity cabinet, like a Wunderkammern from like the early modern period or something. So you've got artificial things, but also like natural stuff and gizmos. It's really weird.
I love it.
It's bizarre.
Have you been in the Museum of Jurassic Technology, Neil?
Not for a long time, but yes. And I loved, what I loved about that most was the same kind of feeling that I get wandering into the house on the rock, which is I am in a frozen story. I am walking from story to story. You're wandering the Museum of Jurassic Technology and you're going, okay, this thing I'm looking at over here is real.
Yes.
And yet over here, and I know that's real. I know enough about, biology or whatever to know that this is real. But over here, they've got a display, an incredibly convincing display about bats that can fly through metal using their sonar.
Yes, the strange invisible bat.
Real.
Yeah.
Exactly. Bats that get trapped in metal doors.
Even better in that place, what I love are the things that don't work, or the things that, like, every now and then you'll wander past a thing that's broken. And you don't know what it was.
Like a diorama.
It'll be in there and there's some sort of thing that looks like a microscope or an astrolabe or who the hell knows what it is. And it's slightly broken and it's dark in there. The lights are off and it's not functioning anymore. And that's the stuff I love in there. Because I find that place actually quite creepy. There's a really uncanny feeling in it that I can't quite describe. It looks a little bit, it's lit like a David Lynch movie in there or something. And it has that same kind of creepy, uncanny.
Liminal.
Yeah, liminal. Exactly.
The only place where I've been that is even more that thing than the Museum of Jurassic Technology and the House on the Rock combined is a place of real things, sort of, which is Mona, the Museum of Old and New in Tasmania.
Wow.
And it's in Hobart, Tasmania. And it exists underneath a house. It was built by a multimillionaire, possibly a billionaire. And it's essentially a James Bond villain's lair carved into a cliff, filled with art. And it's got all this art that you remember from the 80s and 90s. You know, here's the Piss Christ.
Really?
There it is. It's in Tasmania.
Here's the Madonna with the elephant dung.
Oh, really?
And
is that the idea? Did the guy go around collecting all these sort of like peculiar pieces of art from the 80s and 90s that were sort of, is that his personal collection?
He has fabulous taste in art. And I mean that completely sincerely. I love his taste. I love walking through the museum because it is a museum of old and new. And you get things in juxtaposition that break your brain. My favorite of which are two huge flat cabinets, one of which contains what looks like 1950s or 1960s picnic cutlery and flatware. And the one opposite and they're obviously a set contains coins. And then you go over and you look at this coin and you're going, if I know anything about coins, and I don't know much, but I know a little, what I'm seeing here is possibly the finest coin collection in private hands on this planet. Those are incredibly perfect condition, gold and silver coins that are Roman, they're Greek, they're ancient, they're beautiful. And this is probably over there is $7 worth of plates. And over here is several $1 million worth of amazing coins. And they're in juxtaposition. And I love that somebody would do this.
So strange.
Paul, this is Paul's kind of place too.
This is my kind of place. And it's making me now think of peculiar museums and places I've been in the world. So this is just, I love it. All of these, as you say, Steve, well, they're not liminal because they're what they are. They're not really on the edge or they're not pointless or something. They're not sort of non-spaces. There's a place in Saint Petersburg, which is the Soviet Arctic Exploration Museum. Have you seen this?
No.
Oh, it is fantastic. And it's in this kind of domed rotunda building that's sort of, I suppose it's 19th century. I don't think it's as old as some of the, it's not 18th century. And it's got all of these crazy, sleds and all of these things from the period of kind of Soviet exploration. But the best part of it are these gigantic paintings of sort of Lenin standing with these guys pointing at a map. And he's pointing at the Arctic Circle, and all these guys are kind of looking at it. They're all astonished that Lenin is saying, we are going to go there. And it's all this kind of, and these fantastically crazy paintings, these kind of Soviet soldiers fighting polar bears and stuff. And it all looks like something I would have made up when I was 12. I mean, it all just looks absolutely crazy, and kind of walrus tusks, and then sort of strange skeletal remains of things and crazy uniforms and stuff. And it all seems like it's made up in some way. It's not, but it feels like something I imagined or had in a dream when I was a kid. It's fantastic. It's a great place if you're ever
What's
there.
the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you in a museum? Because I have a little one.
Please tell me. I'm going to think about it, Steve. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll think.
So I was in China. I was in Western China in Xinjiang province. I was in a museum where I was looking at, actually, I'm not, just in case I could get somebody into trouble, I'm not going to say why I went to this particular museum because there was a specific thing I was going to look at. But I'm going around the museum and I'm being treated kind of as a bit of a VIP. I'm a Westerner. I'm an author. I'm getting slightly VIP treatment. It's kind of cool. And the best part of that is I'm getting to talk to one of the museum curators. She's showing me stuff that is fascinating to me, that there's 2,000-year-old silk with patterns on it, and the patterns were being made for Rome. And they were actually making silk stuff to order for Rome that would then get shipped to Rome. And what was amazing looking at this pattern was going, oh, this is being done by, it's actually meant to be a griffin. But whoever's drawing it doesn't know what a griffin looks like, but they're working from a picture. So that was fascinating. And then...
That is fascinating.
And then the director of the museum has me come in to their office, and they give me a cup of tea, a beautiful green tea on beautiful china. And they explained to me that they have a bargain for me because they're going to sell me stuff from the museum.
Really?
They have amazing Tang Dynasty stuff that they will sell me at rock bottom prices because they really need the money.
Wow.
And I say,
So sounds illegal.
But you do know that it's illegal.
Yeah.
For a foreigner to take Tang Dynasty stuff,
sure,
to buy it or to take it out of China, and they say, "Oh, that's where we're brilliant. We will give you a certificate that says it's forged."
Oh my God!
It says the object is a fake. The object, okay.
Wow. And I'm going, my brain has just broken in that way that they do, because you are obviously selling me a fake.
Right.
And you're selling me fake antiques that you are now going to give me a certificate that says it's a fake. And
that's fantastic.
I thank them very kindly for the honor, but decline.
Amazing.
You're doing some theater stuff in a way now, because we see you're doing Dickens soon, we gather from. You've done it before and you're going to do it again. Christmas
I'm
Carol.
intrigued by this. I have to say, the photographs I've seen, you look like him. You do. You really do. It's kind of uncanny. It's
I think all you have to be is male of a certain age, faintly dark-haired, and wearing a fabulous fake beard. And you can disappear into the Dickens.
I'm a professional. I'm a professional. I think you actually do sort of look like him. Something about your features, I think, look like him.
The Dickens thing, I was simply approached by a journalist and author named Molly Oldfield, who was working with New York's Public Library. And she said, there is this Dickens, it's the performance copy of Dickens's Christmas Carol. Dickens, back when Dickens wasn't making any money in America, because all of his books were pirated in America because of copyright, he thought there has to be a way to get some of that money out of Americans. So he came over here and did reading tours, and people would line up to get into theaters to hear him. And sometimes he'd do, he did bits of Oliver, he did bits of Oliver Twist, he did bits of different stories. But one of his crowd-pleasing things was doing the whole of A Christmas Carol in this edited version. And she said, New York Public Library owns this version. They have it here.
Wow.
Would you do it? And I said, if I can have a top hat and a beard.
I was going to say, were you like, only if I can dress up in the right way?
Exactly. That was my immediate thing. And
what's the point otherwise?
So I got out there and I did it and I loved it. And it was such a delight. And I felt like I learned all this stuff about the text that I couldn't have known if I just read it. When I read it, there were things in there that really puzzled me. I remember looking at it and going, why? He's lost lots of these famous lines. And they're just gone. Whereas he's kept this scene with Scrooge's nephew and his plump wife. And
crucial scene.
Why? I've never seen this adapted anywhere. Why would you possibly put this in? How bizarre. He must have known what he was doing. And you go, and the amount of annotations and edits and things he's done in different pens over the years on this. This was a Darwinian document.
Yeah, interesting. Really,
he's working to the crowds. Yeah. And what happened when I read it was I got to the place where the nephew and his plump wife are, and the audience needed to laugh so badly. The tension had been building, and now here was this scene, and they could laugh at it, and I'd never heard happy laughter from an audience like I heard at that scene. Amazing. They felt so good, and it's like, oh, you knew what you were doing. You built this thing so well and so carefully.
Yeah. Well, he was a masterful performer, apparently. I mean, he was quite an actor.
He would do amateur theatricals with Wilkie Collins and stuff, right? Didn't they sort of do plays in his living room with his family? And he loved sort of amateur theater. I think so, right?
He loved amateur theater. He loved amateur conjuring.
Yes.
He also loved booze. And
a lot of actors do, a lot of writers do, I imagine too. I mean, I don't want to say
coin of the realm.
his he had this amazing sort of American routine where he would begin his lunch, no breakfast, but then your lunch is basically brandy with an egg beaten into it and some cream. And then before you go on stage, you have a pint of champagne.
Jesus Christ.
Really?
Like, what?
Listen, I've worked with some guys. I have, and it's quite astonishing, like with the capacity some guys have. That's astonishing.
Are you going to dish some dirt on some famous actors?
No. But I'm thinking about the pint of champagne and the egg and the brandy might be pretty good for me. I might try it. Well, it kind of did him in, didn't it? I mean, it kind of wore him out doing this stuff, didn't it?
I mean, he definitely died prematurely. Which bits of his life wore him out?
Oh yeah, more than
it's kind of hard to say. I think the performances were definitely part of it because they definitely took their toll. But then Dickens was also somebody who was he was an insomniac, and he would walk 15, 20, 30 miles a night.
Really?
He'd just go out for these amazing long walks through London at night. And he would plot stories and he would see things and he would encounter things. And there's part of me that goes, well, I don't know how long you can run a body walking 30 miles a night.
Really.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. The beginning of that the old curiosity shop opens with a man talking about wandering London at night. And he has the whole encounter and he finds Little Nell and all that stuff. I didn't realize that was kind of autobiographical, sort of walking at night. Fascinating.
That was absolutely Dickens. He was a night walker.
It's a Christmas carol. There's a tradition in Britain of ghost stories at Christmas. Am I right?
You are absolutely right.
And it's a fascinating one because I think Americans, even though they love A Christmas Carol, I don't think we think of it as it's a ghost story, but I don't know. Steve, right? I mean, nobody goes
I think growing up, I didn't think of it as a ghost story, even though it obviously is.
But of course, it's one of the greatest ghost stories ever written. What I love to know, I have a feeling I know maybe why, but could you talk about why ghost stories at Christmas in England?
I can definitely talk about the fact that the ghost story tradition at Christmas is a tradition of the nights are long.
Mm-hmm.
You are huddled inside. You are feasting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Christmas feast at a time when food is possibly harder to come by because it's the middle of winter and there isn't as much food. But now you're all going to feast to celebrate the fact that the longest day has passed and the shortest day, the longest night has passed, and now you're in that other world. And it is a liminal time, to use that word again. It's a time where the tradition of telling stories against the darkness outside springs up. And some great stories, including some other ones by Dickens, are Christmassy and ghosty. And you get the feeling that the tradition of the British ghost story is something that's meant to scare. It's meant to creep out. What Dickens does actually does scare. People forget that there are some very creepy moments in A Christmas Carol, including, Marley's appearance at the beginning. And of course, including that final encounter with the ghost of Christmas yet to come, and Scrooge's encounter with the people dividing his property after his death.
Right. Yeah.
People forget how creepy it is. They remember Merry old Scrooge. They remember Scrooge goes from a big grumpy, bah humbug, and then, you boy, what day is this? Why, sir, it is Christmas Day. Do you remember that enormous turkey?
One as big as me.
Yes, go buy me that giant turkey. Right on it, sir. Ho, ho, ho. And there was never a person who wasn't as lovely as Scrooge. And that's what people remember, and they forget the darkness.
I'm sorry, when I was in China, my ex-wife is Chinese, and she grew up during the Cultural Revolution, and she grew up in Shanghai, and they were banned from reading all this Western stuff. But interestingly, they were allowed to read Dickens. And the logic was that Dickens was exposing the evil underbelly of capitalism.
Sure.
You know, with these sort of like dark representations of industrial Victorian periods. So they could read that stuff. And then I was just reading Orwell recently, who said, no, that's not Dickens at all. Dickens is all about the character. Like the shit that goes wrong in the story is not about the system of capitalism, at least according to Orwell. It's because Scrooge is a dick, or, you know, some other character. That's what he thought. Yeah.
I think with Dickens, you've got both. And I think the joy and the genius of Dickens is that he's often at his best when he's grumpy about a real thing, when there's something going on in society that is upsetting him. Bleak House, for me, is his masterpiece. And the fury at the legal system that was going on, the Court of Chancery, and what it does, and the idea that you have essentially a specific court to deal with wills and inheritances that is more or less designed to just run forever until that will and inheritance have all been eaten by lawyers, at which point there's no point because nobody's fighting over anything anymore anyway.
Kafkaesque,
that's really in there, and that is one of the driving forces, and it's there. But he's also absolutely in there with the characters, in there with Lord and Lady Dedlock, in there, you know, watching characters explode of spontaneous human combustion.
And the guy explodes in that one. It's fantastic. The guy blows up. That's always good.
Well, your characters often have a kind of, Paul and I are really interested in trickster gods, and your American gods is really interested in this. And I'm interested in the way in which the old gods and the non-Christian pagan gods have these kind of amoral characters. And you're sort of, I don't know if you're celebrating them, but you're obviously interested in developing and tracking them. And do you think it's bad that sort of Christians have been taught a version of religion where there are no tricksters or very few tricksters? Like, is it better to understand that, to have a religion where there's some amoral, troublemakers? Does this make sense?
Absolutely. I get fascinated by the way that Christianity only bears a very loose relationship to the thing in the Bible. I mean, I love the fact that you were talking about a moral God, but if you read the Bible, God isn't moral. God does appalling, terrible things.
He's sort of insane
on a very regular basis. God is you cannot justify anything that God does in there. Or you can justify some of the things, and the only person who gets to talk to God directly and get an answer is Job, who's a really nice, good guy, and who God agrees with Satan that maybe the reason why he's such a nice guy and he's God's favorite is because God's so nice to him. So God's going to be mean to him and kill off everything that he loves and destroy everything. And finally, he's, his family is gone, his property is gone, he's covered in boils, and he gets to go, why? And then God appears to him and said, no, you don't get any answers. I mean, I'm God. You know that? Were you there when I did the stars? You weren't there. No, you weren't. Okay, let's talk about ostriches. Can you make an ostrich? No, you can't. I can make an ostrich. You can't make an ostrich. So I'll tell you what, you don't get any answers. And that's the nearest you actually get. And the other thing that I love about the Bible is there isn't actually, we talk about the Bible as if it is monotheistic. We talk about the Bible as if there is only one God. But you read the Bible, there are lots of gods. He's it's just our one is a jealous God and says you can't have any other gods. There's no particular implication, at least in the Old Testament, that there is only one God, that there's nobody else. All these other gods aren't gods. They're out there. They're being gods. They just, it's like when Moses goes and confronts Pharaoh's magicians, they can turn sticks into snakes. It's just he can turn his stick into a snake that's bigger, that eats theirs. So he's more powerful. And I love the fact that you do tend to feel that the God of the Old Testament in particular is a God that you assume that you know because of the stories.
Yeah.
And then when you get in there,
it's so weird, yeah.
Super
and it's
weird.
not what it is. And you keep getting this thing of, but that's not what the Bible says. My favorite one of which is right at the beginning. It's Adam and Eve, where you say to people, so tell me, why were Adam and Eve thrown out of the Garden of Eden? And most people will explain to you it's because they disobeyed God and they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so he threw them out. And you go, yes, absolutely. That's not what it says in the Bible. And people will go, well, it is. And you go, no, it actually isn't. What it says in the Bible is that because they'd broken his rule and they'd eaten from the tree of the fruit to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God was scared that they would eat from the tree of life and live forever like gods. And in order to prevent that from happening, he threw them out. There are two different trees. There's the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and there's the tree of life. And the tree of life obviously has a fruit that conveys immortality. And God wasn't going to have that, so he throws them out. And I just love the fact that's not in the stories. It's there in the Bible. It just doesn't fit the stories. So
they'll have the wisdom to want sort of immortality, transcendence, and all this kind of, I didn't remember that at all.
I'm going to have to go back and reread Genesis.
Me too.
So I love tricksters. I love pantheons. I mean, if you read my Norse Mythology book, I'm obviously a sucker for Loki.
Yeah. Great. He's a great trickster.
He is. He's a glorious trickster, and he's a wonderful example of somebody who sort of starts off mischievous and troublesome, but will always get you out of the trouble that he gets you into. And then by the end, he's just the bad guy. He's gone one step too far. The whole death of Boulder thing, it's like, okay, you just put yourself beyond the pale. You are on the outside. You're not a trickster anymore. You're a monster. And now things are going to get dark. And I love that. I love the way that the sense of fun and glorious silliness of the Norse stories, just as you get incrementally closer to the idea of Ragnarok, gets darker and colder and more dangerous.
Yeah, that's your focus on myth is fascinating to me, because like a lot of these myths, whether it's Chinese or it's Norse, or whether it's, out of the Greek tradition, it's sort of like there's order, and then there's going to be terrible chaos, and then it's going to happen again. Like there's going to be a cycle of some kind. And it seems like your work is really in that area where you have to get comfortable with chaos and some Dionysian elements and some scary stuff. And even your my son and I went to see Coraline, and it scared the pants off us, and in the good way. And I wonder, do you have any do you feel like it's healthy for kids to get
important for children to get scared, basically. Yeah,
absolutely.
to scare the crap out of kids. Yeah.
I would never apologize for Coraline. I'm so proud of making something scary.
No, it's fantastic.
I'd love to know who was more scared by it, you or your son?
He was scared. I was scared by the eyes as like buttons, and he was freaked out at the idea of imposter parents. He was like, whoa, that's scary.
Excellent. I used to scare myself with that as a kid. I'd be sitting there in school thinking, what if I get home and my parents have left?
Mm-hmm.
They just went away for some reason, and I get home and the house is empty, and what would I do? How would I live if they weren't there? And then when I'd finish scaring myself with that idea, I go, okay, so what if I get home and my parents have left, but new parents have moved in who look just like them? How would I know? And that you could really scare yourself properly.
Yeah.
And you start getting deep and existential.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of just letting kids be scared.
Mm-hmm.
I think horror in fiction, I think horror in ghost stories, I think all of that kind of stuff is tremendously healthy, because it's like a little walk into the darkness where you can still see the light and you can still head back. And at the end of any ghost story, you get to remind yourself that you're still alive. And it's something that we forget day in, day out. Hey, look at me, I'm alive. I get to do this magic, miraculous thing of going around and thinking and feeling. And then you hear a ghost story and you go, whoa, look at me, I'm here. I made it through that thing.
And we talk about that a lot, that it's a kind of rehearsal too for things, right, Steve? I mean, sort of horror and scary things are a kind of rehearsal for awful things, unknowingly too. As a kid, it's almost like, right? I mean, there's a kind of
you might not encounter ghosts, but you are going to encounter pain and suffering and threats and predators, and so some people think of horror as a kind of threat preparation. But I like this idea too that Neil's saying it also just makes you feel alive and grateful to be alive, and also the ones that are interesting too are there's not just that the world is dangerous out there, but there's stuff in you that's dangerous. Like there's stuff inside you that's dangerous. I find that very interesting.
When I was a kid, I thought I was a coward. And I thought I was a coward because I was scared of things. And I thought that brave meant you weren't scared of things. And then as I grew older, I realized actually, if you're not scared, you're not brave, you're just not scared. I put this story into the novel of Coraline, into the book, but it happened to me. I was with my two kids. They were aged about 7 and 9. I'm walking around the house. My wife, and we've just moved to America. I do not have a driver's license yet. We only have one car. She's gone to a wedding in Boston, leaving me behind. I go for a walk with the kids around the grounds, and I tread on an underground yellow jacket nest. Yellow jackets are like these tiny, mean, vicious wasps. And suddenly the air is full of them. And I have 2 kids, and I'm being stung. And I just shout at the kids to run away. And I stay where I am because I knew that if we'd all run, they would have followed. But if the kids run, then they'll sting me. And my brain is not going, you are being brave. My brain is going, this is the only thing you are going to do. You are going to shout at your kids. You're going to stay here. And, you know, I remember we got into the bath together, all of us kids, and counted, well, the kids and me, and we counted our stings afterwards, and I had 39 stings.
Oh my God.
That's they had one each.
Oh, nice.
Look, you survived.
That's
and
good,
I'm
Dad.
sitting in the bathtub,
Christ.
having this conversation with the kids where I'm like, hey, you know, if you wanted if anything happened to an adult you were with, do you know what number you would call if there was an emergency? You go, that's right, 911. And do you know our address here? You know, having that. Anyway, I was okay.
Wow.
But then an hour later, I put, you know, stuff on all of the stings. I put my clothes back on, and I realized that my glasses fell off when I was shaking my head and running. And if I go back now, I'll be able to find where my glasses fell off. If I wait until tomorrow, I won't. I won't actually be able to find that place. This is in the middle of woods. I don't really know the woods around the house, but so I head back, and I was terrified. And I went back, and I got my glasses. There weren't actually any yellow jackets left when I got my glasses, but going and getting my glasses, that was brave. Because every cell in my body said, you are crazy. You have to not do this. Please, you've just gone through hell and now you're going back. And I'm like, no, I got to get my glasses. And I thought about that. And I was working on Caroline at the time. And I thought, okay, so that first time with the yellow jacket attack, I wasn't being brave. The second time was being brave. Being brave is when you're absolutely scared and you do the right thing anyway.
You do it anyway. Nice.
Yeah. You do what you have to do.
And I thought, if I get that into my book, then I can teach kids something, I can teach adults something, I can tell something important to the world.
Do you yourself believe in the existence of ghosts?
I was going to ask, have you had any sort of
metaphor or, you know, symbolic?
I am an author. As such, I am absolutely capable of believing what implicitly and utterly, whatever it is that I am writing on levels that would astonish you. So it's like, do I believe in ghosts? Yeah, if I'm writing ghosts, I absolutely believe in ghosts. I believe in, just as I believed absolutely and utterly in the Norse gods while I was writing Norse mythology. In terms of, do I actually believe that dead people show up? Depends if you're talking to me in the daylight or if I got caught on a foggy night taking a shortcut through a graveyard. You know, I am perfectly capable of believing sensible things in sensible times. And I have the kind of imagination that can scare myself silly and convince myself of absolutely impossible things the moment I need to. And I'm just glad that I use this power mostly for good.
That's mostly. That's mostly. That's where there's an interesting overlap with writers and actors to me sometimes, and why I think you are a good actor, and why some writers can be good actors. That kind of almost method writing thing, where you sort of you convince yourself of the thing is fascinating, and it's wonderful, because I'm in the same way. I mean, it's like I will absolutely 100% believe whatever the hell it is I'm supposed to do, and not only believe it, I'll generate more belief. I'll generate memories about things. I'll generate. It's fascinating to do. So I often think that there's an interesting overlap with the two things.
One of the things that both actors and writers do that fascinates me is if you catch either of them, either a writer or an actor, in perhaps a coffee shop where one is either learning lines or going through lines, and one of them is writing a play,
creating.
You'll see the most amazing facial expressions.
Yes.
You know, I do all of the facial expressions of everybody I'm writing while I'm there.
And you can tell in your dialogue that you are. You can tell that you've got, you know, that you are living the characters, I have to say. Yeah.
And if you don't, what's the point? I love, you know, that it's the music of the dialogue, and it's the way that people talk. And if you can do it really well, sometimes you can write dialogue that does 2 or even 3 things at the same time. It can be everything that is said can be on the page, and then everything that is unsaid can be on the page as well. you can have so much fun doing that stuff. And it's what I love about good actors is good actors will play the subtext. They'll say the words, and then they can mean something 100% the opposite.
Yeah. Do you have to get it in your body in order for it to be an authentic communication to the audience? You know what I mean? Is that why you're sort of making the faces and you have to do the emotions in some way in the body?
Yeah. I mean, there's an interesting way that it's like somebody was asking me about this recently and I keep saying them, so much of it starts with me in my mouth and around my mouth where the words are sort of changing the shape of the mouth. And it's literally also like eating too in some way.
Oh.
And I'm digesting things in some way. So it is sort of like getting it into the body. But it's peculiar how much of it is words in my mouth are affecting
gustatory acting.
Yeah, it is gustatory acting. The gustatory method, the Giamatti gustatory method. But I would imagine it's a similar thing. I mean, it's coming out of your body. I'm having to consume it and get it into my body, but it's coming out of your body. You're like a bird vomiting it up into my little mouth.
Exactly. I am the mama bird.
You are.
Giving you the pre-masticated worm of my fiction.
I see the animation now.
But yes, I can too. But that is what it is. I mean, I do find a fascinating connection between the two. And it's always, the most important person to me when I do stuff is the writer. If the writer's around, it's really nice to be able to spend time with the writer.
Mm-hmm. Let me do a plug. I've got a book out right now called What You Need to Be Warm.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Great.
Thank you. And I will never see a penny from it. I have not seen a penny from it, will never see a penny from it. All income that I would ever possibly get from it will go and has gone to refugees and to the United Nations High Commission on Refugees to basically keep people warm.
That's excellent.
And I'm so cool with that. One of the reasons why I'm so committed to refugees was going out to Jordan in 2014 and talking to Syrian refugees and realizing that they were us. The guy I'm talking to ran a corner shop. The next guy I'm talking to was a dentist. And the next guy worked in a car showroom. Mm-hmm. And these are people who assumed that life was a normal thing and that you live your normal life and you get born and you go to school and you go to college and you get your job and you have your kids and you buy a house and all of a sudden the tanks rumble through your village and the tanks destroy the water pipes underneath the road because they're really heavy and now your town doesn't have any water and some of the power supply is disrupted and the farmers won't go into the fields because they're mined. So you're running out of food and the only water you've got is from the swamp and you let it sit for days until it's kind of clear and you pour it off and you boil it, but it's still making everybody sick. And somewhere in there you pick up your babies and you go, it's 800 miles to a refugee camp and we're going to have to cross deserts and we may die. And it's better than this. And they go. And realizing what it takes to get people to leave their, let alone, their country, let alone their village, let alone their area. And realizing that all most refugees want to do is go home. They don't want to invade your country. They don't want to live there. They want to go home. And it was this sudden realization of this civilization shit is really fragile.
Really fragile. Very
I thought it was
collapses.
so tough. Yeah. Exactly. And it's not.
No.
You can blow it away.
Well, on that note of cheerful.
Sorry.
No, Charles Dickens, ladies and gentlemen.
But your book is really heartwarming. Like this sad facts are in the background, but the book is really a sweet set of stories that immigrants have told about being warm and what does it take to be warm. And it's a beautiful poem. So people should get this book because it really helps immigrants directly. So get out there and buy that book.
Get that book.
And thank you for being so generous with your time.
Thank you so much, sir.
That was so much fun, guys.
Good. I'm glad. And it was such a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
We're great fans, and it was really a treat for you to take all this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Neil.
Much fun. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Original theme music by Luke Topp, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Editing and mixing by Jeff Neal. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.